Okay, I would like to call to order the Tuesday, July 11th, 2019 meeting of the Evanston Preservation Commission. We do have a quorum of exactly 6 commissioners. The procedure we'll follow tonight is that we'll have a separate hearing of each item of business. First, the applicant will present their petition, then the members of the commission can ask questions of the applicant. They will ask the applicant to sit down. We'll give members of the public an opportunity to speak, and then we'll have discussion and a vote by the commission. If you're going to speak tonight, either as a on behalf of a petition or as a member of the public, if you could sign in, is it, Carlos, the sign-up sheet now at the podium?
Let me know.
So if you intend to speak tonight and haven't signed in, you're welcome to sign in now or else when you come up to speak. So first, we'll go through old business that was continued from last time. The first item of old business was 2767 Euclid Park Place. Mr. Ross asked that the hearing be continued again. Between now and the next commission meeting, he will prepare a mock-up, and hopefully as many of us as possible can go over to see the mock-up of what the roof would look like based on his proposal. For those of you who weren't here, I think many of you weren't here, it was very hard to tell what whether the roof would match the historic roof reasonably well without actually having the benefit of seeing a mock-up of the roof in person. He came in with materials and some pictures, and it was just really impossible to tell. So that I would urge you to go over and see it. I mean, Carlos will let us know before the next hearing when we can go over individually or in up to twos. But I think it's hard to make a decision without seeing what he's actually going to do.
Yes, Mr. Ross and I discussed this before. He told me that commissioners can go at any given time. So the only thing they need to do is call him to let him know when they would like to attend, or I'm sorry, to visit the site. The only recommendation is that no more than 2 commissioners should be at the same time visiting the site. No more than 2.
No more than 2. Okay. The next matter of old business, 1032 Forest. Oh, I thought it was withdrawn. It says withdrawn. I thought he was going to do a completely new proposal. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mark?
Okay.
Mark?
So we need a motion.
Shouldn't we have a
continue.
motion? Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I move that we defer 2767 Euclid until the meeting of July 9th,
Second.
2019. Thank you,
Robert,
Robert.
second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry. So 1032 Forest was withdrawn. I think Mr. Eifler was going to present a different proposal. The next matter of business was continue with 1629 to 1631 Hinman. If you could introduce yourself and speak. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Sang-Yul Lee. I'm one of the residents at 1629-31 Hinman. I live on the 3rd floor, one of the 2 third-floor units. Can I inquire, does everyone have a copy of what was distributed last time, a picture of the original rendering of the building and a description of the building?
We do have in the application what was submitted to us. Maybe you can click what's up. We do have some graphics there. You can go down.
I believe this might, oh, there's one. I've not seen that one before.
And that's it.
Right. So if I can approach, if I could
Please.
hand these off to you.
Thank you.
The architect could not be with us today, and my neighbor, Sean Foster and Amy DeMart are away. So I've lived in the building for just short of 20 years in that same unit, and for the entire time, we have had a unfinished third-floor porch. We have 2 French doors that lead out to it. There is no railing. The only change that's been made during the nearly 20 years I've lived there is replacing the flashing on that surface so that it's better for roofing and water evacuation purposes. So our revised proposal, Commission, is that we propose an open balcony with balusters to match the existing and large square posts that are aligned above the existing 2-story columns. The proposal now would provide the owners with a safe and originally intended outdoor space. And so it would basically be a railing and putting down flooring for that third-floor porch.
Questions by the commission? Yep.
Hi. I didn't see in the packet, but I think in this instance, and I would like to see a section through the existing roof structure and the balcony, just because I know that I'm not sure if more structure is needed for the floor of this balcony. And I think it would just be important for us to see the fact that, we want that the cornice and all of that would be kept, and how that would be structured.
So I have some notes,
Okay.
Ms. Hacker, from the architect. Regarding the cornice, the large protruding cornice will still be on view and not obstructed, which was the case in the original plan. The post and rail on the third floor would match the original intention in the newspaper sketch that I handed out. All the materials will match the existing scale and the proportions. And as far as, if your question, Ms. Hacker, goes to how much space there is from when you open the French doors out onto the current, surface, is that your question, Ms. Hacker?
It's really that I know that I'm not sure that the structure of the roof is adequate to hold the structure of this new balcony. So the question is there a modification that has to happen to the existing porch roof to support the new balcony? And if that is the case, what is happening? Because something has to happen for the depth.
Sure. So I asked the architect myself about this. If it was questionable whether even with a roofed version of this, whether there'd be any modification to the surface section of the porch, the floor, the third floor, where the third floor begins. But my understanding is that with the very light type of construction that we're proposing, the surface as it exists right now is even sufficient. I mean, it's not the surface we would want ultimately, but it's sufficient structurally to hold the flooring and a railing.
Okay. Any other questions? Elliot?
Can we go back to what it looks like now rather than this proposal?
You like to go back to the old proposal?
Well, both the old proposal and the existing. And then I guess the question is, what is this rendering that we got?
That's the architect's rendering of.
From when?
This is what the
1904.
architect. Oh, that one, the newspaper rendering. This is actually the advertisement to market the apartment building when it was built in 1904.
All right, which was different in that it already showed a railing where we're now proposing it, and didn't have a railing one floor below.
Well, there's a railing on the second floor. For the second
Well,
floor.
but it's not the stone railing that we're seeing now.
It is not a stone wall.
That's what I wanted to see. Can we? That's what's there now.
Maybe this colored one. That's a very permanent. color photo of the building.
Julie's question.
I think it's in the package.
I know that. It's gone.
Do you want to try? I think it's
So I
in the
think,
package.
Julie, your question is what's happening to that entire cornice that's there? Because you can really see it on this photo that's
Keep
coming
going.
around.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. So how much of that is being altered? It's not as clear from the elevation, Jeannie's
You're saying on the
latest
second
drawing.
floor,
Yeah.
Mr. Secretary?
Well, let's call it I guess let's call it the third floor.
So the third floor is the open part. That's the two units
Which
with
is
the
where
French
you're
doors.
proposing
That's
a
where
new
we're
railing.
proposing to finish off the porch.
Right. So your question was about the structure, Julie? I guess my question is how much of that overhanging cornice remains? It's not as clear from the elevation
You're
that we
talking
just
about
saw.
the cornice that's between the
The
second and
entire
third.
thing, no, the entire thing that's overhanging at the third floor.
Right, but the one that's basically the roof of the second floor.
Let's call it the roof.
My notes here from the architect is that that will not be touched.
Then can we go back to your elevation? Didn't look that way. Well, not on that one.
Which one, I'm not,
On the right, it looks like it's not being touched. Where's the drawing we were seeing as the revised proposal?
no, I have
We're
not
going the
seen
wrong
these.
way.
I'm going the wrong way, okay.
No, go back to that.
There.
Yeah, that one, well, maybe the box unfortunately, the outline pretty much hides it, but it doesn't look like it's the same, is it? You guys are closer.
Yeah. Can I make a recommendation? Because I think we could go on about this. I think we have the same concerns. And it would be good I make this recommendation to maybe take a vote and ask that that a section is drawn for final approval of a detail through the porch and the railing so that we understand that structure's in place and that the same molding is kept, because that's what we're all concerned about. And I think a section by the architect would just answer our questions.
I agree.
Are there other questions for the applicant?
So just so that I can relate this back to my neighbors, you're asking us to have the architect provide some confirmation that
A section, we want an actual section through the railing and the
a
roof.
zoomed-in depiction of what it will look like between the second and third floor?
What she's actually asking for is what amounts to slicing through a cross-section of the face of the building so that you can see what the construction is
Okay.
behind it. That's what, I think you better define section for him, Julie.
I don't know what
Okay.
section is, yeah.
Yeah, so a section includes, yes, you see the structure that's holding up the deck, plus you see the cornice, and you see the railing on top. So basically, an architect would draw that for the thing to get built. So I think the architect would know what that is. It's a detailed drawing, so we understand exactly what we're looking at. It would be produced by the architect.
I mean, if they have a question about it, if they want to talk they could talk directly to Carlos to confirm, so they can have a direct conversation.
Would it be possible, just, go ahead, Mr. Russo.
Well, I will be able to talk to the architect, but also in layman terms, it's basically the profile
The profile?
of the cornice that will include the railing on top and how it's attached to it, so that we know that it's going to maintain the cornice and that the railing will be secure.
I understand.
And also you have the floor, so the flooring will be part of that section as well.
So can I ask for the commission members and also for the coordinator, if the architect is able to confirm the information you're looking for, the profile of the section is structurally satisfactory to the commission, is the overall concept of putting in an open porch with the railing that's appropriate in style and of the period, is that something that we can make progress on today and have it approved pending Mr. Ruiz's conversation and confirmation with the architect on what that will be?
Yes, that's what the intent
Okay.
was, yes.
All right, that sounds fine.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
Just one question for me, Mr. Ruiz. Is this just any time that we can have the architect contact you to
Yeah,
go over that?
yeah, normal, regular hours from 8:30 to 5, weekly, Monday through Friday.
All right, I'll relay that then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Was there any, before we receive a proposal for vote, was there any other comment from anybody, any member of the public? You can have a seat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
You need a
would-
motion, yeah?
Would somebody like to make a motion? Elliot? You raised your
I'll
hand.
make.
Okay.
I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness for, this is 1629 Hinman, is that right? Dash 1631 Hinman, adding a third-story open covered front porch. And this is provided that there is a detailed drawing of the profile of the cornice and the railing on the top. And he's going to work with Carlos to see that through. And this is applicable standards for construction 1, 2, 4, 8, 10 through 12, 14, and 15.
Any second?
Second.
Elliot, second. All in favor, vote, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All in favor.
6-0.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ruiz?
Thank you.
The next matter of business was the proposed home at 2390 Orrington Avenue, which will, the applicants asked to be continued to our next meeting on July 9th. We need a motion to continue.
I'm on a roll here tonight. I'll go away for a month, and this is what happened. I move that we continue the business of 2390 Orrington to the meeting of July 9th, 2019.
Any second?
Second.
Robert, second. All in favor? Aye. Elliot, were you in favor? Okay, so I'll leave. All right, so then moving on to new business. So there were two proposals for 2404 Ridge Avenue. The applicants asked that both be continued until July 9th. It's not a proposal we've heard before. Would anybody like to make a motion to continue?
Both.
Both. Yeah, both items.
I move that we continue 2404 Ridge, both proposals until next meeting, which is in July the 9th. Is that it?
Yes. Okay, second. Jamie, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All were in favor. Nice photo. All right. The next matter of new business is a city project at Ridge Avenue and Greenwood Street, ADA improvements. This it requires only advisory review by the Preservation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, you can use the slides from there.
Okay. Honorable Chair, members of the committee, my name is Laura Biggs. I'm the Bureau Chief of Capital Planning and Engineering for the City of Evanston. So today we're bringing forward a project to make improvements at the intersection of Greenwood and Ridge Avenue. These improvements would be related to the west side of the intersection, the northwest corner and the southwest corner. At the intersection, both of these corners have stairs, both onto Ridge and onto Greenwood. And we propose to remove those stairs, replace them with appropriate ADA ramps. We would then match the sidewalks back into the existing slopes as they go away from the intersection. On the sidewalk that goes alongside along Greenwood, back from Ridge. On the north side, this is actually a fairly complex process because of the geography. It's basically a hill, and we're trying to match into it. And so in that case, the sidewalk would have to be replaced approximately 90 feet back from the intersection. We would be lowering the parkway and the sidewalk. Right now, the hill is rather steep and kind of goes like this, and so we want to kind of cut it and go at a more gradual slope. This would require constructing, in all cases, both along Ridge and along Greenwood on the west side, we would be constructing retaining walls in order to be able to lower the sidewalks and put in the ramps. This is similar to a situation that is at Ridge and Church Street, where we have was installed quite some time ago. They put in a concrete retaining wall between the sidewalk and the private properties. In our case, as our staff looked at it, because it is a historic district, we felt it was more appropriate to construct matching retaining walls to what the retaining wall along Ridge is. So they would be constructed of the same Indiana limestone as the retaining walls along Ridge. In the one case, again, along the north side of Greenwood, where we're lowering the parkway for such an extensive distance, it does impact two trees. These trees, which I think are hybrid elm trees, have been in place for somewhere between 8 to 10 years. We don't know the exact age of the trees. They've grown and they're somewhat mature trees, but as we lower the parkway, they would not survive that process. The city would then replant hybrid elm trees in approximately the same locations. You can't put them in exactly the same spot. We would put them next to the spots where they're currently located. At this point, I guess I'm happy to entertain any questions or concerns that you might have about the project.
Could you show the photographs of the...
Yes, so this is the southwest corner, and you can see that we have the stairs that lead onto Ridge Avenue, the stairs that lead onto Greenwood. This is the northwest corner, and you have a similar situation occurring. This is leading onto Greenwood. This is going across the street to Ridge Avenue. I think that's the end of...
Yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
So what we would propose to do is we will be putting in ramps in this area. This section, this retaining wall would be removed. This whole section of sidewalk would be lowered. You would have these ADA ramps and then a gradually sloped sidewalk that would come to a landing right at the cross. This is called the Keystone. The Keystone landing would be quite a bit lower than the current sidewalk, and so we would be then moving backwards along here to try to match into the slope, but at a more gradual slope than would be if we just went straight into it and did not chase the sidewalk back about 90 feet. So we would be replacing the sidewalk to back about here. This does impact this tree. There's another tree that right here, I think, that gets impacted.
So in terms of city processes, I mean, we're, our empowerment is simply to advise on any preservation issues. And I noticed generally the comments received in advance from the public dealt with with safety issues and so forth. Is there, I mean, we're obviously not equipped in any way, shape, or form to even advise on those. Is there another forum for citizens to present concerns about safety other than Preservation Commission, so they would be communicating with the right person?
So I've had one of the emails was sent directly to me, which I responded to today, and there was another person. So basically, two citizens have responded to us, are based on the noticing for this meeting that live in the immediate area. One of these residents primarily expressed support for the ADA improvements and actually requested As you look, this is actually a pretty steep slope from the sidewalk down to the street, and it's challenging to mow. It's difficult to navigate. She actually requested that we figure out how to flatten that. I can't actually entirely flatten it, but just by virtue of lowering the sidewalk a couple feet, and then we will come in and put in a new grade, so it will still be a slope, but it won't be quite as steep a slope. We will address and mitigate some of her issues. The other person generally had concerns about the design and expressed that they did not think that this was as safe as what was already there, and they were also concerned about the removal of the trees. In terms of safety, the City of Evanston's made a pretty substantial effort over the years to try to be ADA compliant in sidewalk projects, and as we go through and we do street resurfacings, we generally are trying to bring everything up to the ADA, the American with Disability Act compliance, which primarily addresses what's happening right at the intersection, right before a person is stepping from the sidewalk into the street, basically, is the portion that's really covered by ADA. We've had a number of complaints about this intersection. The mayor had has an age-friendly task force that has gone through and looked at mobility concerns all over the city, not just in sidewalks, but in a variety of situations. They have raised concerns that these stairs are difficult to navigate. And then last year, a person on a bicycle actually rode off, did not realize there were stairs, and rode off the sidewalk, off the stairs into Greenwood. Fortunately, was substantially okay. But given all of these things that have been going on, this has been one of those things that's been on our radar for a while, and it's just getting to the point where we're having enough complaints and concerns. We also, in addition to wanting to comply with American with Disabilities Act, I think the City of Evanston generally is trying to be inclusive and make the city accessible in a pedestrian way for people of all mobility. So this has basically risen to the top of the situations we want to address in terms of ADA. We have other situations around town. We continue to try to tackle those, but given that we've had a lot of issues at this one place, it's become more of a concern.
Okay, if citizens wish to discuss those type of concerns, would they discuss them with you, or how
You
would
can
they
certainly contact me directly. My email is available through Carlos or Scott if people cannot otherwise find it. This will be going to Administrative and Public Works. It's not out to bid yet. I'm not quite sure which meeting it's going to, but it will be going to APW and then to the City Council for approval, probably at the second meeting in July. So there will be other opportunities for people to make comments if they wish. But I would be happy to discuss it with anybody that has any questions or concerns.
Right. Any questions from the?
Yep. Unless you want to do it first. Laura, my only concern, not with the concept, is according to these drawings, the slope of the new sidewalks are all 1 in 12. And you can't have a 1 in 12 without railings for that length of run. It has to be a 1 in 20 according to ADA. I'm not sure how you did this, but everything that I've ever done as an ADA project, when we didn't have railings, it had to be a 1 in 20 slope. And here all I'm seeing is 1 in 12, and it's a fairly steep 1 in 12 from that transition where the two sidewalks meet in the street. It's way too steep without putting in railings. So I'm not quite clear who engineered it and how, but I think you're going to have to go back much further than the 90 feet that you show there. I mean, I'm not going to ask who did it, and I'm not going to worry about it, but there's something all wrong with how this has been designed. Not the idea of what you're doing, but the actual execution. And my other question, ironically, is something that came up last year for me, which is you said hybrid elms. Mm-hmm. I ran into the fact that the forester at the time, I'm not sure it's the same forester anymore, that Evanston was no longer putting in the hybrid elms, and I had a long selection of available trees, and hybrid elms is one of the things that they had decided they were no longer going to use for reasons that were never explained to me, so I'm curious about that decision as well.
I will answer the second question first
Yeah, that's
because the
the
answer
easier
is shorter. The current forester is Paul D'Agostino still.
Oh.
And I did, he actually reviewed this project. We sought his input on the tree impacts, and then if we needed to replace the trees, what that would be, and he is the one who recommended the hybrid elms. So I don't know I can't speak to what conversation you've had previously
It was
with
a
him.
year ago, literally, it was called No More
I'm not
Hybrid
doubting you
Elms.
in any way. I could just tell you that I was told, put in hybrid elms, and I
Right.
said, okay.
That's interesting.
So
Okay.
we defer to forestry on those decisions. In terms of the ADA, we've had some extensive conversations about ADA and how it applies. And the ADA truly governs this section right here. That is completely clear, and the guidance in the ADA is very, very easy to understand. But as you work on public sidewalks, not sidewalks necessarily associated with the building, but just in the public way, the ADA is not as clear per our investigation. And so we even reached out to the state and asked some questions. But basically, we're relying on the Illinois Department of Transportation standards for sidewalks.
Yeah, I've just never seen, I've never seen 1 in 12 done, particularly that section from the, where the two sidewalks meet down to the street, because that's a big drop. I don't know what the new height is, but
The new height is much lower.
it still seems to be several feet in drop, and that's quite a run for a 1 in 12. I think you're
It's,
going from,
the new height of the Keystone is not several feet
you're
above.
going
the-
down about 1.5 feet, I think, but I'm not sure.
But, yeah, I mean, this was all
I
done.
think you're usually limited to about 6 inches on a 1 in 12.
So,
I would have somebody take a look at it, because there's something
of
not
course,
right
we
about all of
will,
this.
we will verify it.
And
But-
I've gone through that in parks as well, so I'm not sure what standards you've checked with IDOT. I was dealing with DOJ in Washington and a couple of other things. It came up in a park in another city in a public area as to when it's sidewalks and when it's walkways.
We don't get a vote on this, though, right?
Yeah.
No,
Why-
but I think
why
it's
don't
a
we-
recommendation, and I think it's a question
absolutely
of...
will double and triple check everything before we construct it. We did do quite a bit of research on this because, Evanston is relatively flat. And my question back to people was, how does San Francisco deal with ADA, for instance, if we want to go to the extreme? And as I discussed it with people, and they reached out to various regulatory agencies and experts, the consensus was to match the slope of the street is often considered acceptable. However, the slope of the street was steep, or of this parkway was steep enough, and we had enough concerns that we really wanted to get to at least 1 to 12 in order to be able to make it safer for people who are on wheels, so to speak. So we did that, and that complies with what IDOT requires us to do on all projects that are that are federally funded or partially funded through like MFT, motor fuel sales tax, and various things. So these are the IDOT standards with which we do all of our sidewalks, is the 1 to 12.
Does any other members of the commission have questions? No. Go ahead.
You're taking out a Long Ridge part of the retaining wall. And,
We are.
And you're finishing it by just truncating it. And
Yes.
How are you finishing? The,
It will be kind of a truncated edge, but there'll be a little bit of slope to it. Some of the other areas where the retaining wall comes down to an intersection, you step it a little bit. It's not a completely up and down slope, but it's not like a real gradual slope. It's a little bit of an angle as we finish it.
Okay. All right. Would any members, it sounds like we do, would any members of the public like to speak to, again, we'd ask that you speak to preservation issues because we only have advisory say on those, and we have really no say whatsoever on any kind of safety issues. We don't, have any knowledge of such issues, and this is really not the right forum to do that. But if any members of the public would like to speak, please feel free to come up and introduce yourself.
My name is Janet Gaze, and that's my house.
And you've signed?
I signed in out there, yeah, or here. And I actually have a family member who uses a wheelchair, and that corner is part of our daily lives. And my concerns are all about ADA accessibility, which I have a fair amount of familiarity with. So I'm not, and I've actually, written them up and done some measurements, and I'm not sure that that's appropriate then to share with you.
I mean, we're just the Preservation Commission.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have any, not only don't we have any say in those things, but, I mean, again,
It's surprising to us that, in the neighbors, that the first that we heard about this was for this meeting, the card in our mailbox for this meeting, and not before then, because that is a very unsafe intersection, and there's a lot of accidents, people coming down the hill and onto Ridge, and we have concerns about safety, not about, things, it sounds like that apply to you all, but we do have concerns about safety.
I mean, if
And the ADA.
that happens, that this is the first thing people hear about it, but our piece of it is about this big, and it really, again, we have no
Okay.
expertise whatsoever at the safety
So not
issues.
worth your time for me to be.
Can I just ask a question, though, of us? I mean, so I know you had asked this, so people have to know where to go because it seems like it shouldn't have come, this is just, I don't know, but why it's coming to preservation, but most of these issues seem to be about safety, and those are the primary issues for this.
Yeah.
So where do they go then?
Contacting
Ms. Biggs would.
Great,
Yeah.
okay.
I was going to suggest that Ms. Biggs is the person who is the engineer for the project, for the city engineer.
Okay.
I sent the emails I received from the public to her,
Yeah.
and I believe she had one email directly to her, and she replied to that email. So I will assume that she will also address the other emails.
All right, I'll talk with her. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other members of the public who wish to speak to preservation issues? Gary?
My name is Gary Shoemaker. As you pointed out, your purview is preservation. The piece of this that I would have a question about is the continuity of the limestone wall. It also appears to me, and Laura might speak to this separately, there's currently no crosswalk at that point. Is there planned stoplight crosswalk? That would fall under your purview, but I think the question of how that wall is truncated and what happens to the curve on the outside is really the piece of advisory review that you should be offering to this body. So
Okay, thank you.
that would be my concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we, here's the demolition drawing. So all of this area is the area that is impacted. We're removing this sidewalk. But we're also removing the retaining wall that actually is at the corner currently. When we put it in, this will actually be just like at normal street height. There will be a new sidewalk that slopes up to here, gradually a new sidewalk that slopes up to here. They'll hit this common elevation, and then this is where most of the rise occurs. The wall will be truncated at this edge here, but the new wall will be installed back here. And I regret at the moment that I don't have a picture of where this happens on Ridge Avenue and other locations, but it is similar to what has happened at Ridge at other locations. This isn't the only intersection where it comes down. There is no plan currently to install a crosswalk. This is where it is a little bit of a challenge. The choices are to sort of put back what we are removing with the same level of accessibility. There are people that do choose to cross there, although there are no crosswalks. There's no rule against it. It's not what I would recommend. If we were to remove this piece of sidewalk, because we don't want people to cross there, we also have to come in and remove this piece of sidewalk, and it gets into a bigger issue to keep people out of the street. And there are people that would prefer to cross there. There has been no overriding discussion that says we're not going to let people cross there. But those would be our choices. We could remove the ability of people to cross there, but we'd have to do a bigger project. And that's something, I mean, I will tell you, it's something we discussed. We felt it was better to not change the traffic patterns and to pedestrians, and to just put back what we could.
Now that Gary's asked the question, I think your question, if I'm not mistaken, or what Gary brought up was, you just simply said you're tapering the end of the wall and it somehow comes
I think
down to the sidewalk.
it's stepped a little, but it's not shown in the drawing, so I will have to get a better detail of that to you. I just don't have
There's
it.
actually no details at all for the new wall.
No, there is not.
So the construction of the new
Well,
wall,
there's a
that's
cross-section.
a section through that's the street wall. The one you've got in the drawings is the one that's along Ridge. That's the old detail of what was built on Ridge. That's not the details for the wall you're building along the sidewalk.
We are planning on using that to build a similar wall along the sidewalk.
Okay. But so
But it does
there's
not describe the
there's
termination.
sidewalks there, but no crossing?
Well, and that happens in a lot of places
Okay.
in town. We don't always stripe a crosswalk everywhere people can cross the street at a block. And like I said, this was a discussion that we had, and we were trying to be minimally impactful, even though it's a pretty big impact what we're doing. I acknowledge.
So I just have a question. So we're really not really reviewing safety issues. We're reviewing what this looks like and making recommendation, although we don't have enough information to really know what some of these answers to these questions in terms of what it actually looks like. So it seems like we should have that if we're making a recommendation. I don't know if other people, it seems like there should be some rendering of a new design, so we can see really how the wall terminates. So if that's what we're slated to recommend, make the recommendation based on. So I don't know how other people feel on the commission.
Are you reusing the old stones? I mean, you don't have enough to build what you're building.
No. Indiana limestone is readily available, and the staff in Public Works if people have damaged the wall in various ways, have frequently had to purchase Indiana limestone to make wall repair. So we're not planning on just discarding the old limestone, but we feel it'll be relatively easy to procure the matching Indiana limestone.
I'm just wondering, so the preservation issues involved here are really negligible, and the safety and ADA issues are what are going to dictate the improvements, and they're not really going to be dictated to any great extent by aesthetics. I'm just wondering if it's worth investing any more time in the commission in. I mean, even just the other matters up tonight all have material preservation issues that we can actually have a say in. I'm just wondering if it's really worthwhile use of our time.
Okay, I would just ask that I think we could make a recommendation based on this if we had more visual information of the questions that have been asked that relate to preservation in terms of what it looks like. So that's what I would say. So that we could, but we can't. I don't think we can. That's what everyone's asking. Like, how does it terminate? What is it? All of that. So
I'm happy to provide that detail to Carlos. I don't think that detail is entirely created. Be honest. It's more extensive than we would usually do for this kind of project, and I understand your concern about wanting to have it. So we can provide that detail and have it distributed. It is up to you if you want me to come back.
If we don't vote on this tonight, does it have any consequence? I mean, is our vote, can they just proceed with the project anyway?
This is review.
Yeah,
So
it's just review.
my understanding is, and Carlos can correct me if I'm wrong, that your vote is purely advisory, but I am interested in your comments and your vote. There are no consequences to the schedule if I have to come back. The project is just getting ready to go out for advertisement. It's not going until late
Okay.
July to
Then
council.
if you would not mind, then we could continue until you could give us some depiction of what the appearance would be.
Absolutely. It's not a problem.
Can I add something? I think, Laura, it's really, my sense is that if you take a couple of those photos that show it, and somebody just overlays it by sort of drawing where it is, even a very simple sketch and showing the walls, no one expects a very high gloss rendering or anything like that.
Understood. No, I absolutely.
I think that's what Julie's asking for.
That's totally fine. I have no problem with
All right, can we have a motion to continue into our July hearing? Robert?
I move that we continue Ridge Avenue and Greenwood ADA improvements till our next meeting, July the 9th.
Second? Jamie? All in favor of continuing?
Aye.
Unanimously in favor.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, our next project of new business is 1418 Judson Avenue.
I'm not sure how this works, so
You can see the arrows up and down.
I just click.
And then
There it
there's a
is.
pointer, there's a star, that will be the pointer.
Oh, thank you. Okay. All right, well, this will give you the general idea. I'm Susan Bedard, I'm the architect. I'd like to introduce Leslie Sevchek, my client. She is the owner of this unusual house. This is a house that has been through a lot. It was originally built around 1880. It's been added to at least 4 times that we can identify over the years. This is the back of the house. We're concerned with the back of the house. The part of the house we're proposing to demolish is mainly the later add-ons, probably from the 1950s. This is what the back of the house looks like now. These two, this first and second floor is what we're demolishing. What this drawing doesn't show is the tree, which is actually touching the house to the right of this part we're demolishing. This house is home to the largest oak tree in Evanston, which at present, like I said, is actually touching the house. It's a really huge tree. It's 18 feet in circumference at the base. The owners have taken very, very good care of this tree, and it's an extremely healthy tree, but it's a real complication in our project. We are determined to save the tree, but we want to change the back of the house. So when you look at the proposed rear elevation, the way that this roof sets back at the second floor is due to the tree, which kind of spreads a little as it goes up, and we had to back away. We kept the same wall line at the first floor because it's the least disturbing to the tree if we reuse the old foundation. So that kind of explains the shape. We believe the shape and the scale of this addition is in keeping with the overall appearance of the house. It has a primarily vertical form, which is consistent with the Victorian houses, which tend to be vertical. The windows are wood, double hung, and comparable in shape and size to the existing windows. The overall height is nearly the same as the height. It's a little below the highest peak of the existing roof. The roof pitch is 12 and 12, which is the same as the two gables on the front of the house. Interestingly, the side-facing gables, the existing side-facing gables are all 8 and 12, which we're copying in our side-facing gable that's being added here on the left. But the ones that you see from the front and the back are 12 and 12. The existing exterior is aluminum siding, we believe over lap siding, but we can't see it, so we're just guessing. But the new siding is what you're seeing here, which is going to be hardy board lap siding and a matching exposure to what's on the aluminum, and eventually, in due course, the owners plan to remove the remainder of the aluminum siding. The original details, such as the crown moldings over the windows and the crowns at the eaves, are being reproduced. And in general, we're trying to work into the appearance of the existing house. The owners have been excellent stewards of this unusual house. For example, their recent restoration of the front porch was beautifully done, and they would like to update their kitchen and the living areas in the back of the house, which, believe me, is sorely needed, and to save their oak tree. So, any questions?
Were there changes to other elevations as well?
Well, the side elevations are affected because, of course, we're building a new rear addition, but the fact is you can't see them from either the street or the alley. This is all you can see, and you can't see it very well, by the way. But I do have the elevations of the sides.
If you could just show us what
The
you're
rear,
changing on the
oh, that's
side
existing. So this is the south side, and this, actually, this elevation is existing, and we're not changing it. This is the side elevation of what we're building. There's no way you could see that from either the street or the alley, just because of where the other buildings are and the garages and everything. And then this is the other side, which, believe me, you can't see. And boy, do we have a hard time figuring out the existing. It's only 3 feet from the lot line. There's a tall fence on the lot line, and it's one of the most invisible elevations I've ever come across.
And what alterations are you making to that elevation?
Well, from here, well, actually, this is all new siding, because from here, this is existing house behind here, except that we're adding about 2.5 feet, building all the way to the lot line on that side. If I go to back to the plan, you can see the addition. You can see we're adding this little strip. So on the north side, this is all new. But there's house back behind here. It's just not quite as close to the lot line as what we're doing. So this is all existing. This is all new.
Did you have any pictures of that facade? I don't think.
No, it's impossible to take pictures of that facade. I'm serious. It's the only person who can see that facade is the guy who lives next door from his roof. So there you can sort of see what we're proposing, and that's the front of the house. See, there's the back, and there's the tree. And, well, is that it? I thought I had more pictures. There are more pictures in in the packets. I don't, maybe are they at the end? No? All right, well, oh, these are the ones that I sent you later, Carlos. Those are not the ones that, there's printed ones in the packet. But anyway, no, we were unable to take pictures of this side that were any help at all. There's, but I can show you the elevation of that side. Well, actually, there's an existing, this is the existing kitchen behind here, and there's an existing little sort of a back door and steps that I didn't bother to draw because I knew they were going.
Any other questions about it?
I have one, because at first I was looking at your proposed first floor and said, my God, they're walking out the family room and falling to the ground.
Well, yeah,
in the
there's
door.
going to be a new deck, which I've drawn here, but it's not part of
Yeah, I didn't.
what we're
that's why I'm
proposing
asking.
here.
I don't quite understand. There is a stair now, but that's in a different location.
The stair now,
coming out
right
that door.
here, there's a back door, and there's a little concrete stoop outside that back door. So when we're done, the landscapers are going to come in and build their deck, and, that's
But yet, you're showing us the deck, but we're not reviewing the deck. I mean, I just.
Yeah, I
not
understand
quite sure
I
how
understand the
to proceed.
difficulty there. This is my suggestion to the landscape people of how the deck should look, but it's not part of this permit, so it's not, This is matching the front porch. The owners would like it to match the front porch. It will probably look very much like this.
Is that a problem, Carlos, or not? I mean, we're looking at something that's part of what's proposed, but it's not really being proposed.
Excuse me. The architect is saying that it's not part of the project, so you can ignore that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we're not asking for approval for that. I drew it because it's going to happen, but it's not,
Does that mean they have to come back for that?
yeah, theoretically, I guess that's right.
Okay. I
The
just
landscape
thought
people would come in with
that
the
they-
deck.
The owners need to know that as
Yeah.
well. Okay.
So, we have the requirement that whoever wants to build something has to be visible from the public way, and it's a permit. And then we also have our rules and procedures that will allow certain activity to be approved by staff rather than the commission.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question just about, I know you're trying to save this tree. You are extending the addition, and so, you're extending
Yeah,
that
we're
room.
going
So,
further
like, how do
into the
you,
yard.
I'm sure that root structure of that tree is going under the, where you're going to be building?
We have consulted with the arborist that the owners have been working with for many years, and he feels confident that with hand digging and careful root pruning, that because it's such an isolated area of work, that we can do this small amount of new foundation. It's going to be pretty hairy, but we're taking his word for it that this can be done.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this? Okay, any further discussion by the commission members? Take a vote. Would somebody like, go ahead, Julie, I'm sorry.
But so this deck is coming later, so right now, you wouldn't be able to get out, you just wouldn't be able to get out of the French doors for the house there, because adjacent to that, right? You just can't get out of it. And then you have to come before us for that. Is that right?
Carlos said it could be admitted.
Well, it could be administratively if it,
Okay.
complies with our standards, and if it's something that is in our list of things that staff can approve.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve this?
Looking at me, God.
Go ahead, Ira.
All right, I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness for 1418 Judson the removal of portions of the rear of the house, construction of a new two-story addition, and an extension of the home, and it would be the applicable standards for construction 1 through 5, 7, 8, and 10 through 15. And do we want to combine them, or a separate motion?
Combine. You can combine.
Okay. And for demolition standards 1 through 6.
Okay, second.
Second?
Robert, all in favor? By saying aye, it's unanimous.
Aye.
In favor. Thank you. Okay, so 1514 Judson Avenue will be continued.
Yes, we need a motion to be continued.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue 1514 Judson until, Robert?
Yeah, I move that we continue 1514 Judson until our next meeting, July the 9th.
Second, Jamie, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous in favor. Next matter, 1229 Judson Avenue.
Hi, good evening. Our petition is to replace our garage on our property.
Can you tell us who you are? And
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm Carolyn Muskowski. This is my husband, Ben Muskowski, who's listed as the applicant on the project.
Thank you.
This is our site plan proposed, so it's showing the new garage. If it's okay with you, I'll flip through to the pictures of the proposed garage. I'm not sure, would you prefer to see the pictures or the drawings? Pretty simple design. I can also show you the pictures of the existing house. Mostly you're seeing the back of the house. The one on the top right is the front of the house. And this is the existing garage. It's the original garage. It's being held together by boulders from our neighbor's yard holding boards in. So it's definitely needs some structural assistance, which is what prompted us to replace it. And then I'll scroll back to the pictures of the proposed garage.
Can you tell us about the materials you're using, please?
Sure. It will be siding. It's a vinyl siding. As you can see, the color is intended to match the color of the house, which the current garage does not. The one detail on the garage door that you cannot see is that there is a cross pane in the windows of the garage door, and the little panes at the top of the garage door. We have planned to put lighting on either side of the garage doors, kind of decorative fixtures on either side of the main garage door. On the side that is facing north, we have 2 windows. You can kind of see them on the side there. And then on the west side facing into the property, we will have 1 window in the garage door, the person door.
Are the windows vinyl as well?
The windows will be vinyl.
Could you show the rear elevation of the house again,
Sure.
please? Thank you. It's hard there. Okay.
What is the siding on the house? What material?
It's stucco.
Oh, it's stucco, not
Stucco.
siding.
Mm-mm.
Do you have any, you have pictures of the existing garage?
Yes.
You did have to,
Not asking you to match it, don't worry.
The house was, when we bought the house, it was white. I don't know why the garage is yellow and red, but it it's light here, but it's yellow in real life, and red trim around the windows and the door, obviously.
And the height and massing of it, of the new garage, is very similar to the old garage, right?
No second floor, no raised roof.
It's about a foot larger.
And the existing garage is closer to the property line than the new garage will be. We're making it compliant with new zoning. It's also, you can probably see this by the size of the apron. The current garage is set further back into the yard than I guess is standard. We've been told than is standard, and we're going to maintain that so it won't move closer into the alley. It's the the garage that is east of us is very, very large. It's a large structure, so we thought it would make it very tight in the alley if we moved it closer to the alley.
Can we go back to your new garage? Okay, is the orientation the same? I guess I got confused by all these southeast, northeast. So is your ridge running the same way?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
This actually makes it look as if it's set quite a bit further back from the alley. I realize it's a rendering.
It's a strange, when we saw the pictures, we were a little surprised at this. In the drawings, you can see that the details are correct. In this picture version, it's a little odd looking. And yes, it looks like it's set in the middle of nowhere. We have existing walkways in the yard that will be maintained. That will all stay the same.
So just to repeat, so the windows are vinyl and the siding is vinyl? So did you think about matching the stucco of the existing house and just using materials that were more in keeping with the historic house?
We didn't consider stuccoing it. I mean, certainly we've talked about it in the past, but you know, the existing garage is not stucco either. It's siding, so we didn't consider it too thoroughly. The garages that have the majority of the garages in our alleyway are siding, regardless of the structure of the houses. So we felt like it was kind of in line with what we see for garages, at least in our alley.
Well, I think the intent, though, is that you try, these all came along whenever cars were invented or whatever, and your house probably preceded that era, so I'm not sure you should use the other houses on the block as the precedent. But it's a question of these materials versus, is there any relationship? I'm trying to figure out, and it was hard to tell from your photos, whether there's some relationship of some of the detailing to details of the house, regardless of the stucco versus vinyl.
There's the house has quite a lot going on, and always has. We've this is our third major project on the house. We've tried as we've gone along to make improvements here and there to try and bring some integrity to some of the things that have been done to the house. So we don't take lightly, putting in vinyl siding and vinyl windows. We've restored several of the wood windows on the house, particularly large size windows, the ones that have details. But you can see, unfortunately, right in the first floor of the house, there's a huge row of vinyl windows that we did not put in, and we hope someday to be back here to take out. But,
Okay, any other questions for the applicants? No, thank you. Was there anybody from the public here to speak to? You can have a seat, thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
The only thing is, I understand this garage, it's in the back and vinyl windows. It's just I just want to say that historically the commission has been sort of a steward of materials, trying to shy away from these materials. And so I don't, I just want to say that because it's hard to, we've seen garages that have made every effort to match the house in every detail and materials. And so this one is hard because I think we also have to be careful about setting precedents and other issues with stuff that we're looking at, even if it's a garage in the back. So.
Can I just add one thing? In the, and sorry for the miscommunication, the window material, we do have that as wood or checked in the application, I believe. Is that?
I don't know.
Better check with Danley before you promise something.
Yeah. Look, so
there's no way of knowing what they priced out, but I think I would verify that. They probably priced it out with vinyl. I think to speak to Julie's point, I probably would have preferred wood and hardy board or even that as a kind of material rather than going the vinyl. I don't know about the whole thing being stucco. Chances are running the stucco to the ground on the alley side would probably get wiped out by a combination of you possibly not parking properly, but chances are the garbage trucks and delivery trucks and all the rest rather than your parking skills. But I think it's a legitimate concern that she's raising, which has been an issue over the years about at least some effort. And that's really the people who have drawn that and designed that garage for you really probably should have taken some effort to look at details of the house, whatever they are, and make some effort to incorporate those. I'm not seeing that at all in this case, and that's unfortunate.
All right. Well, I guess we can either, we can vote on it or decide to make a recommendation. Otherwise, I don't know if there's any simple kinds of changes that the applicants could come back and institute. I mean, it's basically the design of the garage itself is.
I mean, if other people have suggestions.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest looking at, instead of vinyl siding, like a hardy board siding, and I would look at just a couple things. And the windows, I'm not sure what they're listed at, is if they're...
It doesn't seem clear.
So it may not be clear. I just, that's my recommendation, is just to be a little more thoughtful about the design of this garage, just in terms of its materials, and I guess it's, its roof detail.
Did you do any kind of costing out of other options? I mean...
Yeah, so the hardy board...
I'm sorry, you'll have to come to it's being recorded, and so you have to speak into the microphone.
The hardy board, I mean, I don't know if you want a percentage of the overall project or how you want me to talk to that, but the hardy board was an additional about 34% more than of the overall project, so that's why we went to vinyl. The vinyl siding. The windows, we'll go back to that, so I won't speak to if it's wood or whatever that is, but that's why we chose vinyl, or swayed towards vinyl. How's that?
I'd be a little bit concerned of what the vinyl's how well the vinyl's going to survive on and when I made the comment about the stucco, I'd probably be much more concerned about the vinyl on that side of the house as well. That's going to take a beating, like it or not, and it doesn't really hold up that well. So I think some of the reasons for proposing other materials really has to do with the long-term life as well. But I understand. I appreciate. I think all of us, including people here, understand about costs.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve? Well, you don't, I mean,
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
go ahead, Robert.
I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness for 1229 Jetson to build a new detached garage in place of existing garage. The new garage will have a gable roof with 6-inch overhangs, asphalt shingle roof, Georgia Pacific vinyl siding, and 3 single-hung windows, applicable standards for construction, 1 through 5, 7, 8, 10 through 14, and 16, and demolition as well, 16. 1 through 6. Is that correct? All right, 1 through 6, thanks.
All right, is there a second? No? Well, I'll second so we can vote on it. Okay, all in favor? All against? And then all abstain. So it did not pass. I mean, I guess I assume our advice would be to try to work on a garage that was materials that, Julie, I don't know if you want to express it better than I would.
I would just make an effort. You're in a historic district. I would just make an effort to have the designer, look at the materials and any of the detailing. Just, and really not wildly elaborate, but something, just something so that we can feel that there is, I think, or that some of the commissioners can feel that there was an attempt as opposed to just, putting up this vinyl box. So that's my recommendation. Does that help at all?
Well, I guess what I heard in terms of concrete pieces were wood windows and hardy board versus vinyl. Is the layout and the look of the garage in those materials sufficient? The house has as I said earlier, has a lot going on, and I'm not sure how we would match components of the house in the garage. I can think of a couple of small details, but I guess my goal is to keep it as simple as possible.
Right. I think the simplicity of, it's a box basically for your housing your car, but so I think just at least looking at the materials a little more, and I would say that. So
is that changing the materials, or is that?
Yes, I think it's really hard to just say, fine, I don't want to speak for everyone, but it's hard as a preservation commissioner to just say, yep, vinyl siding, just be a little, even in terms of the way it's drawn or the windows and the way they're depicted or where they are compositionally or anything. Just some semblance of a little more design. That may not help what I'm saying, but I don't know. We've seen. I'll tell you, we have seen Danley garages go up, and sometimes they take the roof pitch or they change the detailing or the material changes, and that has gone through. So it's not that it can't go through. Correct me if I'm wrong with the commission.
Neighbors just 5 down who just did it last year.
So it's not like you have to have the garage with the turret, some strange roof form or something. I just think we're looking just for something that is actually, in terms of. Gee, I don't know. Can someone else on the commission clarify this?
I'm just letting Julie saw herself off the end of the limb, and this is fun. Seriously, I think that it's hard to tell because the only clue that we have is not the front of the house, and it's really hard for me to see that middle photo at the bottom, which seems to be the only time we see, let's call it the east side or the rear of the house, which is the closest thing to the garage. So I'm having a struggle trying to figure out what I'm really looking at there. And there's got to be something about how you relate it. And what's really unfortunate, and they kind of gave it away even with a rendering that didn't put it in the right relationship. It's as if we already have this in the box. We'll just, give them drawing number 47, and that'll be good enough. And I know that seems a bit casual, but I tend to think that, as Julie just said, they've done garages in places, that we've seen that took some clues from the house, and you don't get any feeling here that any of that was done. It's hard for me to tell whether there's some trim and other things on the rear of the house or in other parts, and maybe somebody else has looked at the house more carefully to see whether there's some elements that could have been incorporated. I'm not sure. I mean, vinyl is a problem because everybody on this commission goes, oh my God, vinyl, and we all sort of start panicking and breaking out into whatever. But I think it's much more, are there some things about your house, whether it be the original house, pre-additions or not, that could do it without necessarily doing, the elaborate roof that you seem to have on the original house. And I don't think you need to do that. But there had to be some things. I think it's more than the material. That, in crude terms, is a cookie cutter garage, and it looks like it could be on any lot in the Chicago area without any reference to where you're putting it. And I think it's kind of a throwaway, is to me the way they've handled it. And I'm saying they've handled it, not you, even though, it is yours.
I mean, often it's just simple things like the windows matching to the rear of the house so that it's a hall. I mean, as Elliot said, it's a little hard for us to tell we can't tell whether there's any relationship or not, or whether there was any effort to do that. But there's no one requirement. I think there was just a feeling that, on the whole, it didn't look consistent with the historic house in some kind of basic quality way. So, okay, thank you.
Before, excuse me, I'd be happy to stop by your property and maybe look at options, because I think the commission is interested in, approving something, but that would meet the standards rather than that. So I'd be happy to stop by and give you some suggestions if you agree. And it will be just my suggestions as staff. I cannot predict what the commission will do, but my hope is that whatever I suggest will fit your budget, or at least will be closer to your budget. So it would not be just any garage that could be anywhere. So I'd be happy to do that if you're interested. You can.
The budget may mean that we will not be back soon. So
Carlos,
I appreciate that, but we'll
Carlos,
definitely
Mark,
reach out.
and maybe even Scott. Would we have been better off, and this is also for their timing, I'm ignoring budget momentarily, because by doing what we've done, they have to reapply, and God knows how far out into the future it is. Would we have been better off to say that we're deferring it or however, because that allows them to modify and come back as a continuing application? I'm just asking whether, because I'm just trying to save you the agony of, coming back in November and saying, what's the point? I'm just asking.
Well, the motion was to approve, and it didn't pass. So we didn't have a motion to deny. So I think that's opening the opportunity for dialogue. What can you think you can do to make your project more in keeping with the standards for construction? Is anything else out there? So that's why I'm offering, if you would like me to stop by so I can see and appreciate better what the site has to offer, and whether or not there might be a way to design a garage that would be sympathetic to the character of the house. So I don't know if the commission has the same thought as far as continuing, or because if you can modify your design and keep the same application, I'm okay with that as a staff. But I don't know if that would. If you're going to keep the same footprint, the same location, you're not going to change anything as far as zoning. We're still in good standing with that.
Well, my question was, now that we voted on the motion, we probably can't do it, because whether it would have been, in hindsight, to have said, let's defer it and have them come back, but I don't know that we can do it now.
Carlos said we can continue it.
Well, my point is that there was no motion to deny, there was a motion to approve, and that didn't pass.
Well, I think we want to give them the opportunity to continue it.
Right.
Yeah, either way, they could come back next month if we had the materials in time.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. All right.
Okay, well, why don't we continue it, and then you could come back next month, and if that is too soon, then you'll let Carlos know, and we could continue it again until you're ready.
All right.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay.
So we'll need a motion to continue. Julie?
Okay. I make a motion that we continue the project for a new detached garage at 1229 Judson. Do I have to list the standards? Okay, with the applicables?
No, only the date.
And to be heard July 9th, 2019.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Robert? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. Thank you. 715 Sheridan Road.
Good evening. My name is Gary Shoemaker. I'm with Shoemaker Design Build Associates. I am here to present the project for 715 Sheridan Road. This is a two-story addition proposed to the north end of the existing structure, which is a brick house that was built in 1910. This existing corner of the house is a two-story sleeping porch that was enclosed some number of years ago. Our addition extends that porch about 2 feet to meet the property line. We are zoning compliant. We have Carlos has a copy of our zoning compliance letter. The visible portion of this project is from the front on that corner and obliquely down the side. The house to the north is built immediately on the property line with a zero setback. So most of this north elevation is obscured. So this is the existing house. We've taken these photographs from within the tree line. If you've gone by the house, you'll see that there's a tall row of trees between these properties and the street. This is just within that. This is the sleeping porch that we'll be demolishing. This is the view from the entry between those trees coming in, so you can see that peeking out over here. The two renderings here show the new addition. This is the two-story addition with a gabled roof. We are replicating the masonry, the cornice work, and the chimney from the main house. The chimney is on the back side of the house, and there's another on this end. We're replicating the brickwork and the details on that. We have sourced brick through Gavin Historical Brick to match this product. We've had them out several times to do this. All the limestone work will be replicated for the front. As we take down this section, as well as a portion on the east side around the corner, all the brick will be salvaged. Everything we salvage from the demolition is going to be used for the street side and the visible sides. Everything on the back of the house will be the newer brick. So again, this is the one-story garage immediately to the north, and as I said, this wall of that particular garage is immediately on the property line. So our setback is 5 feet from the property line. We have a window high. We have a small service door on the side below, but that's a blank wall that's about 5 feet off of the face of our house. Again, looking from Sheridan Road in, this is the portion of that structure that's visible relative to this portion of the structure that's currently visible today. Our proposal is also to replace all of the existing windows on this facade. This project has undergone a couple of additions and several remodelings over the course of its life. One of those was to enclose and create an addition on this end of the house. These are all Marvin windows that were installed as new windows. Most, if not all, of the windows in this section of the house were insert windows. The windows on this section of the existing house were installed as proper new windows instead of insert windows. So our proposal is to replace all of the windows in the main body of the house with new Marvin Landmark Series windows, specifically the Ultimate Series. We're going to use a bone white instead of a pure white that blends in more with the mortar and the limestone on this house. Right now, if you've seen them in the bright light of day, they're a pretty stark contrast to the house. We'd like to tone those down just a little bit. The significant piece on the front of the house that's affected by the window, these are original stained glass windows, and if you look and if you've seen your packet, these frame sashes have failed, and there are storm windows covering them now. Our plan right now is to church glaze these windows. We're going to have them fully restored and installed behind thermopane glass as part of a Marvin system, which will remove the additional layers of storm panels in front of them. And so this is the south-facing facade of the main house. There's no change to this end of the house. These are the rear elevations. The section we're talking about is this corner. This is the two-story sleeping porch on the house now. This is the volume of the addition that we're putting on. There's the chimney. That's the chimney masonry detailing caps that we'll be matching in the project. Excuse me. This is the north facade. This is the facade of the sleeping porch we'll be demolishing. This is a breakfast room / screen porch that's semi-enclosed. That's part of the remodeling project when we construct this two-story addition on the back of the house. And again, as I said, this section is immediately adjacent to the garage to the north. We'll put a recessed service door into the side of this and windows above, so we'll have a view. We'll take light into the upper story of the house, but we've left this section blank. Again, because one, it's predominantly obscured, also because it's immediately adjacent to the existing structure. From the front elevation of the house, the flat elevation, there's the porch we're taking down. This is a non-original window. We're not sure when it went in, but it is not a thermally broken window, and it's not simulated divided light. It has a grill on it that's applied on the inside, not particularly well. These, we believe, are not original. That was a sleeping porch, but they are aged windows. They are casement windows. Again, do not match anything on the house. None of the windows on this house were mold windows, at least none of the original windows we've located. The windows in the front of the house are these casements. Those have the leaded glass panels in them, but they are leaded glass panels in full-frame casements. So again, this is the section coming down. This is the new addition. These windows would be the new Marvin Ultimate windows. These would match that, continuing the sill and the head courses all the way across the house. These remain as existing. These are Marvin Ultimates as well. These windows are all replaced. These two windows are existing as well. These are existing leaded glass windows, one of which is relocated slightly higher on the facade. The other remains exactly as it is. This section, you'll see that we've indicated the infill windows in the gaps relative to the new. It's a Marvin window. The sash frames and sizes are the same, but because we are no longer going to be using these inserts, the glass area does improve by about 2 inches in both directions per sash. These are our leaded glass and casement windows. You see again that the size of this sash, and you look at the packet, the difference here is about a 1/16 of an inch between the existing window that we're replacing and the Marvin Ultimate that we'll be putting in its place. You can see the leaded glass behind these, obscured by the storm panels. The heat gain between these windows has caused the leaded glass to fail. Majority, if not all, the glass restoration experts would recommend framing these and putting them behind insulated glass to preserve them. So they are in good condition. The caning has failed, but most, if not all, the glass is still intact. So we plan to take those out and remove them from the site during construction. Another view, you can see the detailing in them. Again, an indication that the mold windows, the 16-panel mold glass windows, are not common to this house. So you can also see that the sizes of the size of the frames and the inserts vary as you go through the house, depending on where and in what era the windows were replaced. So again, our intent is to replace these with a consistent Landmark series window. These would all be aluminum clad windows as we submitted in the packet. There's one of the insert windows again. You can see our goal is to eliminate all this panning and increase the light in the house. Our addition, again, if you look on our elevation, all of the flying rafter tails, the copper gutters, and the ceramic tile roof will be replicated in kind. And there's our zoning. So.
I'm sorry, so the pointer was moving a little. So the in the center portion of the main facade, are those windows being replaced or are those remaining?
The window unit will be replaced. The stained glass will be removed, salvaged, reconstructed. And if you're not familiar with a church glazed window, it's a casement sash, but on the inside it has an additional clip and frame, so a piece of stained glass is inserted on the interior side and held in place so that the window remains operable, but the stained glass is protected on the heated and cooled side.
Okay. Alrighty. Questions?
Could I see the east side? Sorry, I wasn't sure I had it on. Where did the sort of half timber, I guess that's what it is in that center bay?
This?
Yeah, where did that all come from, if I can call it that?
To clarify, I'll answer your question. This facade is not visible from the public way, so it's not part of this application in terms of your approval, but that's a conservatory. It's all glass.
So that's all glass at the top?
What you're seeing are the framing members for the solarium, or for the conservatory structure.
Okay. Other questions? Are there any members of the public here to speak to this project? Does anybody want, or is there any discussion before we make a motion? No. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve? Robert, you want to? Please do.
All right, I move that we approve a certificate of appropriateness for 715 Sheridan Road, constructing a two-story addition along the north end of the structure with matching masonry, ceramic roof tiles, limestone caps and cornices, and Marvin Ultimate casement, double-hung units to match the main structure. Second level of the east-facing portion of the north addition is constructed with Marvin Ultimate French doors and fixed units, wood trim, brackets, outriggers, and rafter tails. Also replacement of the non-original double-hung inserts with Marvin, ultimate double hung encasement windows, restoration of lead glass panels, also minor resizing of existing openings at the first level to the north on the main west elevation. Applicable standards, alteration 1 through 10, construction 1 through 5, 7, 8, and 10 through 15, and demolition 1 through 6.
We're going to have to ask you to do all the motions from now on. A second, please. Somebody, please. Aleka would like to second. All in favor, signifying by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Yes, you've got it.
Can I wait here?
You can just keep going.
Carlos could have just put me at the beginning, and it would have been just as fast. My name is Gary Shoemaker. I'm with Shoemaker Design Build Associates. The project we're talking about now is at 730 Sheridan Road, which is directly across the street from the project we just spoke about. This project includes, this is a mid-century modern house that has had some work done on it. We were before this commission a year or so ago for a master suite we did that included some skylights and some remodeling on the north side. This project is a culmination of a larger master plan that we had for the project that includes enclosing this existing open porch. Not entirely, about 2/3 of it will be enclosed here. If you look, the existing house is a twin of the one immediately to the south of it. We also were before this commission to do some work on that house several years ago. This front door assembly and the paneling inside is all applied. It's all applied paneling. This is the view looking from Sheridan Road at the front door, which is simply a blank wall. Our proposal is to enclose part of that entry and to create a new front door as you approach the facade. And Carlos, I think I sent you a revised copy of this. Did you not get that one?
I'm not sure this is what we have.
Okay, so there are a couple of small differences from this. I sent Carlos a revision. This is no longer a glass door. There's a glass sidelight beside it. That's a solid door that'll be stained. For the side of the existing porch, we're going to use painted shiplap siding with a 3/8 inch reveal that comes along the side and returns around the front, and then against this facade, which is a solid door again and a piece of glass, there's a small overhang that provides a little bit of a weather break. This is the existing open porch. This is the enclosure, and again, in the revised packet that we sent over, this is a solid door, and there are half-round gutters that run along this edge. On the rear of the house, this is an existing full glass door. This is an existing 4-panel sliding door. We're replacing those in kind. The project that we applied and have now completed with this house included a Pella Architect Series contemporary window, which is basically a modern putty glazed version of a Landmark Series window through Pella. We're going to use the same window system, window and door system on the back of the house. So again, continue with the application that we had requested previously. This is that applied paneling that obviously the storm door will be gone. On the inside, this window is also being replaced to match the side light with a full height casement window. Again, you see the casement windows are typical on this house. There are currently 2 double hung windows on the house. This one, which is tucked into that entry porch, which will become part of our entry sequence and adjacent to the side light, and another double hung window on that side that will remain until perhaps a future project. Again, example of the windows that we approved before. This is the sill height of the existing window we're replacing. These we can't determine who the manufacturer is, but again, they're not consistent with the rest of the house, so we're asking to replace these with windows that would then be consistent. Details for the casement window itself, the Architect Series doors, the sliders, and the approval.
Okay, any questions? No. Any public comment? No? Any discussion? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve this project, Elliot?
I move that we issue a certificate of C of A, all of it, for 730 Sheridan Road, for the partial enclosure of an existing covered porch visible from the public way, including a new entry door, 2 new windows, and new wood siding, and replacement of a rear entry door and sliding patio door that are both visible from the public way. The applicable standards are for alteration 1 through 10.
Second?
Second.
Robert, all in favor, signify by saying aye. All in favor. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Are the minutes complete?
Yes, I sent the minutes to Olawan, and I believe he responded that he didn't see any issues with it. I don't know if Elliot had an opportunity to review them.
You weren't here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I really couldn't tell. There seemed to be so much discussion. Decided I would defer to all those who attended.
It was quite a meeting, but the minutes portrayed it very well.
Thank you.
There were some sentences there that I couldn't quite follow in terms of how they were stated, but I just couldn't figure out how to rewrite them, not having been there. Even if I'm...
So we have to approve the minutes?
It would be desirable if you have read them and you're ready to approve.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes? I don't know who was here last time. Robert.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes of May 14th.
Second by Julie. Want a second since you were here? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then the abstentions.
Yeah. You can still apparently approve it if you thought they were right. Don't ask.
So it's 4
or 0 and 2 abstentions.
Okay, 4.
Okay, so we'll make it 3 approve and 3 abstaining who weren't here. Staff reports?
Okay.
Do you have any staff reports? Or should we go on to we've got a discussion list.
I think the only thing I would like to just, Mr. Anderson is here? Yes. That would be under, just move forward because the applicant is here, or the person under discussion, item B. Mr. Anderson is the person who would like to address the commission.
Okay,
If that's okay.
May I make a comment? Because we didn't do it at the beginning of the meeting. I think that we should have introduced and welcomed the new member of the commission before the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, we were going to do it at the end of the meeting.
Oh, well, that seems inappropriate.
Let's let Mr. Anderson,
Sorry,
the members of the public speak first. So go ahead, sir. If you could introduce yourself.
And also, if you could sign, please, too. Thank you.
But they have 2. Which side? The people are signing on both?
You can sign under applicant.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I'm audience. Whichever.
Whatever you prefer. But there's nobody to talk, so...
Here for trees.
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm here for the trees.
Okay, I apologize. I thought that nobody was here for the trees. So.
Okay, so let's let Mr. Anderson speak, and then we'll go to the trees next.
Right. I will leave as soon. You were up before me, so.
No, go ahead. Why don't you speak, and then we'll keep going. Go ahead, please.
My wife and I attended a...
I'm sorry, can you tell us who you are, please?
Oh, my name is Arthur Anderson. My wife and I reside at 715 Michigan Avenue in Evanston. 715 Michigan Avenue is a landmark home in the Lakeshore Historic District. We attended a meeting of or a session explaining the use of development of solar panels on homes. When I was at the meeting, I posed the question whether the program that was being proposed or endorsed was available for landmark homes in historic districts. Kumar Jensen, who was at the meeting representing the city, stated that he actually didn't know, but I'd have to refer it to the Landmark Commission. I called and suggested I call Carlos. I've had dealings with Carlos because my wife and I had a fairly extensive renovation project on our house in 1993. So I asked Carlos what the procedure would be, and he indicated to me that you'd have to make a full presentation to the commission to put solar panels on a house in the historic district or on a landmark house which is outside of the historic district. The issue in putting solar panels on the house is relatively simple, I think. That the panels are of standard size. They are either red, or they're either black or blue, depending on the material that's used in the solar panel. The issue is really what impact putting a layer on top of the roof has on the historic impact of a particular house. I looked at, I think there's, that the regulations provide that in terms of changing the roof material for a house, that they can either be decided by the staff or can be decided by the commission, depending on the impact that that the change of material has on the historic significance. That I looked around at houses and I found, the memo that I sent an email to both the Carlos and to Kumar Jensen asking that the regulations be amended to permit the staff to make the decision of whether a certificate of appropriateness should be issued by the staff or by the commission. I found, I think, the extreme example, I found 420 Keeney, which is a two-story brick two-flat with a flat roof, which is surrounded by homes on three sides and faces the street. The report, which is part of the which is part of the website for the Preservation Commission, has a survey that was done in 2011, which, with respect to the roof, says that they can't tell the material because it can't be seen from the street. To me, that's the kind of situation where the staff ought to be able to say, if you want to put solar panels on your flat roof, you ought to be able to do it. I went, that the city of Evanston has taken steps to say that they want the city eventually to be totally relying upon renewable energy sources. That the city has organized an alternative for city members or residents to elect to get all of their electricity from renewable sources. They adopted a plan entitled, let's see, where are we? They adopted a program in November of this year calling for the city to be 100% reliable on renewable energy by 2030. As the owner of a landmark home, I think that I should know more how the Preservation Commission is going to integrate its legitimate desire to preserve history with the need of the city to have sustainable energy delivery. So what I'm asking, what I'm recommending, is that authority be given to the staff in situations to approve, in appropriate circumstances, the installation of solar panels. Now, I also recognize that there are situations where solar panels on a home would be totally inappropriate. The main feature of my home is a sweeping roof, which is very unique. I would never, ever think of putting solar panels on the front of my home. On the other hand, I also have a garage with a south-facing roof where I could very easily put solar panels. And I don't know that that's feasible, but I think there's certainly a line somewhere where people should know what they can and they cannot do, and they should have some guidance. So I guess I would like to have my email outlines, the small change that I would recommend for the regulations, and that email, copy of that email is on pages 139 and 140, all the materials which were distributed for this meeting. I also, after I submitted that, was curious about the history of solar panels in historic districts. I read the agendas for all the meetings which are on the website. So I read agendas for 2016, 17, 18, and through May of this year. I found two homes that had applied for solar panels and had received approval from the commission. Interestingly, each of those houses is within 500 feet of my home. The solar panels have been on those houses for at least a year. I walked past those houses almost daily when I was going to work and drive by every time. And until I found that, I had not even noticed that the solar panels were there. So I think, that solar panels, in some ways, are a symbol of progress in home building, and I think somehow they should be compatible with preservation.
Yeah, I think the commission has not taken any different position than that ever. I don't recall us ever, in my years in the commission, I don't recall that we ever turned down a solar panel project for the exact reasons you're citing, both in terms of appearance and the importance of solar
what
energy.
I'm saying, all right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think the, we do tend to divide issues for administrative staff and versus commission into issues that have no material effect on the exterior appearance versus issues that do. I think we could look at whether there's some type of division like that can be made for solar panels. I think, as you yourself said, somebody could, in theory, come to us with we've definitely on other issues. We haven't had many solar panel issues. As you said, we've just had like 2 or 3 in the last few years. Clearly on other issues, we've had people come to us with proposals affecting front facades of structures in historic districts that one would be astounded they thought that was somehow compatible, and the neighbors were astounded that they thought that was compatible. And so I think we wouldn't, I don't think the members of the commission would support giving up authority over something that did have a major effect on the exterior appearance. But again, we clearly agree with everything you're saying, and that's clearly consistent with how we've acted. And to the extent that we can, I don't think there have been, again, there have just been a couple solar panel projects in the last few years. If we felt that somehow there were projects that were such that they should have a staff approval, we could look at whether there's some kind of guidelines. I don't think offhand any of us could draw that line at the meeting.
Well, let me address that. That when I spoke with Carlos said he did not have authority to do that because if you look at line 55, it says solar panels, is something that has to be presented to the commission.
Right, that's correct. Right. But we could look at whether there are any. We could look at whether there's a distinction that could be made. And again, we haven't looked at it, so I don't think we could respond today. But we could look at whether there are certain categories. A lot of other things on there. It's divided into things that are have a major effect on exterior appearance versus things that don't. And we could look at whether we could have that division with respect to solar panels. Again, I don't think we could do it offhand, but it's something we could look at. It seems like a reasonable request.
This is listed as a non-voting matter. But, when I go, this is a recommendation from a citizen and an owner of a home. They have, I'm not asking that you set guidelines. I'm just saying that a person who comes in should not be in the position that Carlos has to say to them, I can't give you an approval on a simple thing. Carlos could not approve the solar panels on the flat roof that I described because he doesn't have authority to do it. Okay. And that's what he told me. Right?
Okay, again, we appreciate it, and we could look at whether there are certain solar panel projects that should have administrative approval. To be honest about it, I don't think the commission members would accept that all solar panels, no matter where placed, would automatically be approved.
I'm not asking for that.
Okay.
My proposal is that you amend the middle section of line 55, and so that you say on that one, X or, and then leave X for the one that has commissions, so that the staff could say, simple situation, yes, we're going to give you a certificate of appropriateness. I call it on the 2 projects because the same company installed both projects which were done within 500 feet of my house, and I called the person who installed both of them, and he said that he estimates that he would increase the cost of his bid by $1,000 if he had to prepare the documents that are required. Under you've got a lot of things that are asked for to make a presentation, and you don't mandate that the builder be present, but in most cases, when it's successful, you've got to get good answers. That person is going to be there.
Okay, we can look, I mean, we're constantly relooking at the standards, and as we do, we will look at this issue.
And I add one other point. The program, the program that the city was trying to get people to join, the people have to sign contracts to be participating in a group purchase of solar panels by September 30th, and that the tax credit of 30% for the cost of the solar panels is going to be reduced from 30% to 28% on January 1. So for people, if you want to market this to people, I think it requires some action relatively quickly.
I want to encourage you, because of your specific project, which we haven't seen, and we don't know where you want to put your panels, I absolutely think, we, as Mark said, we'll discuss whether any issues of having solar panels, will that fall under the category of administrative review. I don't think we can say that now, but I would encourage you for next month to submit your project right away, because you will, it sounds like, if you get that, you will be fine for the September date. And I do think that the solar panel projects that have come before us, there have been some where we've made recommendations and they have come back again because, for instance, let's say it was a landmark home with all of the solar panels facing the front of the house, the street, which maybe was facing south, and it was landmarked, and that did not pass. So they did adjust, and they did get through, but it isn't, this is an issue that is, it's not as simple as you may think. And yes, certainly a flat roof house is much simpler than some of these historic homes with massing. That's very complicated. But I just want to say one thing. I think it's important, and you bring up a really good point, and I know I've spoken to Carlos about this, that the Preservation Commission and I just forgot his name, Carlos, the head of sustainability, Kumar should have a workshop or something where there's actually a discussion for people who want to, come and listen and learn about the application of solar panels and how it overlaps with preservation. Because as we hope, we believe this, that preservation happens to be a big part of the sustainable movement. It is not something that is, to keep a house and not build a new home is part of being sustainable. So I think that is a very important dialogue to have with the public, so the public can understand that it isn't as simple as it seems. That's all I'm saying, because someone might, exactly what Mark said, put that solar panel on that great, octagonal roof, and that happens and can happen. So
I'm not saying that there should be a hard and fast rule. I'm just saying that you should give the discretion to the staff in appropriate situations to say, yes, you can go ahead. You don't have to go through all of the details. It's and I think there's a need to do it relatively. That's a simple thing. It's one line is or X.
Okay. We spent about 10 meetings of 10 hours of meetings on those lines. They're not that easy. Yeah. I mean, again, we can't just tell the staff to have an impressionistic view. They need actual guidance. And even, listening to you and thinking about this, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem so easy just to, tell the staff, well, maybe you can and maybe you can't. We need to come up with more than, and we will work on that. We will undertake to do that. But as Julie said, I mean, you should certainly proceed with your project. We have not we've not stopped anybody from putting solar paneling on their house.
I have a question.
I am not advocating a particular project. I'm here because it seemed unfair to me that that Carlos had to tell me that he didn't have authority to do something which I thought was fair.
I think we're oversimplifying a couple of things. I don't have your letter in front of me, but I recall that you were equating this to the line about roofs, where roofs are both checked off, which was fine when, someone's coming in and saying, I want to put a new roof on my house and so on. And yet here for at least 2 meetings and not tonight again, there's been the struggle with this elaborate roof up north that we still haven't seen the mock-up. So you begin to see that we can deal with it. You're also saying, oh, well, if it's a flat roof, it's not an issue. Anybody putting a collector on a flat roof is not laying it on a flat roof. They're going to be tilting it at about 40 plus degrees, L plus whatever percentage. And so it could be that, in fact, if one said, oh, well, flat roof, not a problem, that in fact it would be more visible than some of the collectors and panels that we've seen that are actually hugging the roof. But our problem historically has been when we've had panels, they're not part of the roof. They're either on the roof, projecting several inches, if not more, above the roof. They're set in a way that they can be possibly removed or not removed. And they are a very visible portion of the roof, which is why, as Julie said, we've struggled with them. We've had people redo the patterns of how they're oriented, where they're put, and all the rest. To simply say, oh, well, and this is not to denigrate Carlos, oh, well, Carlos can do it and you're sparing us the work. No. We've taken this very seriously, and it's not a simplistic thing. Flat roofs are okay when we put collectors there and so on.
I'm using that as an illustration.
Well, it's a bad example then.
Right. It's an illustration. To me, it's a situation where it would be very simple to show what the impact would be.
Then who's going to decide? Carlos looks at it and says, I think it should go to the commission. It should not go.
Who decides on when you have roof materials, change of the roof materials?
We do. The commission
does.
Well, then, what does line 34 mean when you put it under X or and then X? X or under staff, and you have X under commission.
The intent of just informationally, we talked about this a lot. The intent was that if it's simply a replacement with the same materials, that they could approve it. If it's changing the appearance of the roof, he can't. And again, we put the XOR as we debated that for a long time. It's not. But we do approve.
I didn't bring the staff, the regulars with me. That you have. I think line 34 says replacement with the same materials. You don't need material. Then there's a line down where they're talking about a change in materials, where both the staff and the commission have legal authority to issue, and you have that in of the 55 categories you have there. 7 are like that.
Yeah, those categories were meant to allow the staff to decide whether there was a material effect on appearance. Right. And they weren't meant to exempt it out from commission approval altogether. And to the extent we can come up with something in solar panels, it's going to be similar. It's not going to be a blanket exemption for all projects.
I'm not asking for that. All I'm saying is that I think that the staff ought to be able to look at something, make the decision, give the person who wants to get solar panel, wants to support energy, a quick answer. If in the opinion of the staff, it's not going to impact the appearance of the project.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the heritage tree ordinance. Right? Is that what you're here to speak to?
Can I say something about the solar panels too? It's like an added plus for me. But okay.
Can you tell us who you are?
Yes, I'm Carol McCullough, and I live at 1120 Elmwood Avenue. And I do know my neighbor, I think at 1101 Greenleaf, was turned down for solar panels a few years ago. So, nope, he's a landlord. That's why he was turned down. That's what he said.
Okay, and I'm sure there was something that, he was.
I'm just.
I know. So, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So it happened.
And I have a historic house, and I remember during the discussion, one of the things was you had to differentiate from the old part of the house to the new part of the house. So we did a little, 4-inch jog, and my opinion of the solar panels is, I think they're ugly on every building. So if they're on a historic house, everyone knows they weren't part of that, and it's distinguishing from.
We have tried hard to approve them because of our support for sustainable energy.
Right.
Beyond perhaps what the appearance might suggest.
Right, okay, good.
So were you going to speak to the tree ordinance? Was that?
Oh, no, I just wanted to find out what the plan was. I think we need some laws.
Okay.
Before you go, did you have a chance to sign on the?
No, I didn't.
Please do.
Oops,
okay.
Whoops, sorry.
So the heritage tree ordinance, I think I guess there are kind of two aspects of it that maybe bear discussion. One was that the possibility had been raised, which I think was maybe in the Pasadena, California ordinance, that the Preservation Commission would make determinations with respect to individual trees, heritage trees. Does anybody wish to express an opinion on our involvement in that?
Okay, so I don't know how we would do that. I mean, I know when we look at landscaping issues that there may be certain issues that fall within our purview, Jensen Garden or some feature, something that we would want to try to protect if it's landmarked or something. But I don't know how we would deal with, the tree issue if we don't. I don't know. So I can't think of how it would fall within our purview.
I mean, I would think that the city arborists and other people with expertise should be making those determinations.
I mean, unless there's some historic grove that is going to all be cut down, which I know it has come up, the front yard or something.
Had a situation tonight. I mean, we had that 18-foot oak tree. And I think there was a case of the owner really making every effort to save the tree. The question is, I'm not clear, and I know I didn't read all those potential ordinances in terms of, how does it affect the tree and how does it affect the community? I think part of the problem is, and I know why Carol's here, is trees that affect your house, that even if it's not specifically on your property, and it may well be, you'll have to wait, I think, but until he calls it. But I think it's really when is it a heritage tree, Mark?
Okay, so there is a tree ordinance. Let's just back up. There is a tree ordinance in Evanston right now.
Okay.
There already is, but it generally exempts out. It doesn't cover trees on private residential lots. I think it's like under 2 acres. And so it appears that when the city council passed that they made a political decision not to try to restrict individual homeowners. Now, so for example, the Kendall College property was subject to that tree ordinance. And at the time the subdivision was approved, there were things on the subdivision worked out between the city and the developer. But those are still in effect, but there aren't additional restrictions on that, half-acre lot because the city made a policy decision at that time not to cover in the ordinance individual homeowners' lots, trees within them. So I don't know if the proposal is specific, but clearly the city may decide that existing ordinance isn't strict enough that should require, for example, individual residents to do mitigation measures, even if they cut down trees. It may require whatever, and there's some basic policy decisions. But the direct tie into the Preservation Commission was the possibility that the Preservation Commission would be the party to decide what what steps should be taken with respect to individual trees. And so I just thought it was important to get out there in a narrow sense of our input that we didn't feel that we were the right people to be making decisions as to, I mean, we don't know any,
We're not arborists.
Yeah, we're not arborists and we don't have any expertise, and it does require expertise to make these decisions.
I think the only place you can see it is, and we're not going to be the ones that can determine, is a tree viable, is it not? And I'm not even sure, other than, George Washington planted it or whatever else, but even then. But I think it's a question of how does it affect some of what we consider landmark properties.
I mean,
Is there a time where these affect the property?
Okay, we have seen projects where there was a project where the tree was so close and they wanted, I think, wasn't it the garage? I cannot remember which
Yeah, it
project,
was that garage.
right?
It was a couple
and
months
it was
ago.
so close, there was no way you could actually put the garage up. So the question is, if we were to say, and I'm not advocating for this, to say, oh no, that tree is X, and then that takes, like, how would we decide that takes priority over, you can't build anything on that lot? I don't, that seems out of line. And I just want to say something with Leslie's project, so that it's great that they're trying to save that tree. It is an oak. It may survive the construction. Hopefully it will. Hopefully it will. If it doesn't, but if she had said, I'm just using this as an example, if she had said, this is really, we need to redo this addition, blah, 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 and we're going to hope to save the tree, and if it doesn't make it, then we would not say you couldn't do, I don't think we'd say, well, you can't do that addition because of that particular tree, forget it, keep the house as it is. I can't imagine us saying this. So I'm actually not sure, and maybe I've got this all wrong, and that's not what you're asking us. But in landscape, but there are areas, I suppose, that should be protected that come up under landscape for preservation, but individual trees like that, I'm not sure.
I think the reason the Alderwoman Fisk made the proposal was because realizing that the existing tree ordinance does not cover private trees on private residential lots, and it has raised the question of should the coverage be made more strict. Again, there's all kinds of issues that to be decided, and I don't know that obviously as a preservation commission, we think trees on the whole are integral to the character of the historic districts. That's not an issue. But I don't know that in terms of exactly what restrictions should be placed on residential lots, that seems like a very political decision affecting homeowners that the city's going to decide. I just don't know that it's our decision in any way.
I don't know am I allowed to talk?
Sure, come on,
Okay.
come on up.
So, here, I want to show you this picture.
Here, do you want
So I'm Carol McCullough. I live in a historic house. There is still a little house next to me and a garage and another little house, which is completely out of character for the rest of the neighborhood. It was recently purchased. It's going to be demoed. Two of those trees, which over are 100 years old, were cut down so that 2 townhouses could be built and a 1.5-car garage. So I sent Carlos an email pleading with him, like, I live in this historic house, that tree's 100 years old. Can you work with me? But there's no rules, there's no laws.
Yeah.
So.
No, it seems like a very valid concern, and I think that where the Alderwoman's coming from is this kind of realization that there are no...
I'm sorry, the other woman?
The Alderwoman. Alderman Fisk. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Is the one
Well,
who's
it's really a case of I'll call it North Evanston.
Okay.
Other suburbs have tree ordinances, and I think it would be great if we had one, but I don't know it should, I don't know how that happens then, like, that has to go through city council, so it becomes a law, because, other suburbs have them, and when you take a house down or whatever, you have to have a permit.
Right.
And sometimes, and if you take a tree down and then you have to replace it in kind with, X number of trees or whatever you have to do. So, but that seems like it doesn't, so I don't know, does it come from preservation? It goes through, it's who make.
But it would have been great to have preservation help me with our tree that's jointly owned on my property. I don't know, and it's visible from a public area. And you can figure out how old a tree is based on its width.
Yeah.
So I
think that the conclusion and the genesis for the ordinance is that there really isn't a law per se restricting private trees. And so the question is, should there be?
Yes,
and that's
is the
a
answer to
bona
that.
fide question.
And I can make those decisions.
One question I have, and I don't have the answer, it's just a hypothetical. If there was somebody was nominating their house as a landmark, and one of the features of that home in its landmark listing was the tree, like if the subject said, and this and this and this happened to the house, and there is this enormous tree. I've never seen it. I don't know how that would come into play, because it's, trees can live or trees can die.
Right.
Generally
if it's
speaking,
a significant I guess that would be a significant landscape feature.
if it's a kind of a whole landscape, I think in a few cases. But if you look at, in the ordinance, there's nothing.
Yeah, there's nothing in the ordinance.
There's nothing in the ordinance. There's something about masses of landscape or something, and I think we have, in very rare cases, looked at that. But again, individual trees aren't really covered by the ordinance, and there is a tree ordinance, but it just, the city made a decision to exempt out individual homeowners, is the truth. And
That's my question. I have a question. So, Carlos, let's say, what would be the avenue to, how would a tree ordinance for residential properties move forward in any way? How would that, legally, or who poses it, or what? How does that work?
But maybe just give a little bit of background.
Okay,
So there was
great.
a referral from Alderman Fisk to look at a heritage tree ordinance, or the creation of that. So we provided a little bit of information in the packet about several other municipalities and the types of ordinances they have and their definition of heritage trees. And we also, as Chair Simon referenced, have included the City of Evanston's tree preservation ordinance in Title VII. And as was stated, there's basically a threshold for when it's included. And right now it's subdivisions over 2 acres or planned developments. So one option would be to change that threshold. And then just back to process. So it's been a reference from Alderman Fisk. So it's here tonight as a discussion item to take any kind of input from the Preservation Commission. Following tonight's meeting, it'll be discussed at the Planning and Development Committee of the City Council. There they could flesh it out further and take the input of this commission and either make changes to the existing tree preservation ordinance, for example, changing that threshold and making it applicable to more properties, or could provide direction to come up with another ordinance that would be more specific to designating or landmarking individual trees, for example, as included in some of these examples. So I think all those things are up for discussion this evening.
So couldn't we, I don't know if everybody would want to, but could Preservation Commission make some kind of recommendation if we agreed that we were interested in changing the tree ordinance and having them look at properties that were less than 2 acres? And does anyone want to make a recommendation that would be an interesting thing to examine? Or does everyone want to just stay out of it?
I would propose we say 2 things. One is that since it isn't covered by the preservation ordinance, individual trees, we certainly would be supportive of the idea that the city assess whether the existing, the tree ordinance should be amended so as to potentially cover some of these difficult
Well,
issues.
yes.
I don't think we can, I mean, as Scott said, there are all kinds of choices. The ordinances work all very differently from each other. I mean, some, just, I think like Glencoe, for example, you can cut down your tree, but you have to do mitigating measures. One of these, the ordinance it actually had a landmarking type heritage tree ordinance where each individual tree had to be protected, and you went through a process like you would to landmark a home against the wishes of the owner. And again, those are all very difficult. I don't think we could possibly make specific recommendations beyond the fact that we would, because we see these issues and we don't really have authority over them, we would support it. A general look at this to see if something can be done.
But I'm saying the general look at to see if something, because I think that that we would be looking at, let's say there's a grove of trees and it's a landscape feature, there's someone, or in a Jensen, there's like only, I don't know where those occur. So, but, and that we want to protect those as a feature that's an important landscape feature. Those are things that we don't see a lot of those. We don't see a lot of them on the commission, but they could come before us.
But I do think we should also say that in terms of who makes decisions as to individual trees, that we don't feel it's a historic preservation matter.
Well, the other
We
thing
should be
is that,
deciding.
Mark, I mean, typically, possibly with the exception of alterations, it's really only going to be in a demolition situation. If somebody's coming in for new construction, then a tree may not be applicable unless the process of putting in the addition or the construction wipes out some trees.
That's what happens.
But it's probably more common during that demolition process, and that may be part of the alteration. But I don't think we have anything right now in the ordinance for that's not one of the criteria for a C of A.
Right, but I don't think we want, like the decision of which trees are heritage trees. Right. I mean, the Pasadena ordinance actually gives the Preservation Commission, I think I have the right one, that authority. I would like to say we don't feel equipped to have any decision-making authority with respect to specific trees. It's just not our area of expertise.
What is their vehicle for designating?
It works a lot like designating somebody else's house as a landmark. If somebody could, she could designate her neighbor's trees as heritage trees, and there would be a hearing, like a landmark hearing, to designate them even against the wishes of the owner.
Wow. I would not recommend that we move into that territory here.
I worry also about, even if we go into the private sector, which I don't have a complete problem with, getting into, what size lot. Because you could have the smallest lot in the world with some seriously important trees or whatever else. So it shouldn't be associated with size of lot, saying, oh, well, if it's more than so many square feet, it's applicable. If it's not, I don't think you can do that. I think it would end up being all or none.
That's not how the ordinance works. It would remove the exemption for residential lots for under 2 acres.
Which makes more sense if you're going to remove it at all. I think go ahead. Don't mind us.
Historic areas.
Sorry.
I have a question. So Evanston has historic areas, correct? Districts, not just individual houses.
Yeah.
So, and then there's districts.
Yours, I believe, is a landmark house.
Right. No, I'm not in a district. Yeah. Right. So you could say in those districts, you can't cut down trees that are 100 years old or older.
It's too general.
Yeah.
I feel like that's too general. It's like I don't think we could make that kind of general statement.
Yeah. I don't think so either.
I think
it made it sounded really easy to say that.
Yeah, the city council is going to have to decide, but none of the ordinances work that way, and I think part of it is politically homeowners would never I mean, when this ordinance was passed, the city council made a decision not to try to fight individual homeowners on their trees. And whether, again, whether the city council wants to change that or not is up to them. I just don't think, as a preservation commission, we can be in the middle of that. I mean, clearly we do, we do believe that having
You like old
the tree
things, yes.
canopy enhances the historic district. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah. I guess I just feel like with this whole CO2 thing and the green and the solar, we're sending mixed signals with the trees, so, not you guys, but yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
But I appreciate.
Is that enough of a recommendation to make? Did you get our input?
I was trying to figure out what input we gave.
We got the input, and certainly if there's any other input, we'd be willing to take that and pass it along.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. All right.
If I may ask, I know there was a lot of thought or ideas or concerns, maybe if we could be a summarized statement so I can put together the report, so that what's the position of the commission on this?
I could put something together and try to clear it, but let me look at the resources we have, because it wasn't like there was one. I mean, it was like, here are a whole bunch of ideas that are very, very different from each other. And so I think all we could say is that something very general. I'll put something that we can run it by one or two, other people, whoever wants to look at it. Or I'll let you send it out for comments to everybody. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
There's
We
somebody-
denied. Oh, I'm
There's
sorry.
not a speaker here.
Leslie, come on.
Last but not least.
Sorry, I know I've been here a long time. The one thing I wanted to say just about my tree, which is like a gift and a curse at the same time, there are definitely construction practices that can help preserve a tree in a situation like mine, and some guidelines along that I think would be very helpful for people that are choosing whether to take a tree out or not. And I also feel that there are trees, and then there are really historic trees, and they're not the same at all. The only calls I got from neighbors about our project were if we were taking the tree down. When it's 3 stories high and over 300 years old, there are not that many of those. And so for an individual to just say, get a backhoe, and that affects your entire district. So I do think that any efforts that the commission could do to help people not take trees out that are significant to the neighbors, significant to our historic district would be great.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that.
clarify, I mean, we don't have any jurisdiction over the trees, but the ordinance, I mean, there are different ordinances, but one of the ordinances, and I think, the calling it heritage tree ordinances, one of the ordinances designates the approach of one of the ordinances is to take the largest heritage, or the most important heritage trees, and to protect those. So that's one approach. A lot of the ordinances take very different approaches, and so there's a
Right.
again,
I mean, like
we're-
giving a plaque or something. I understand. I
No,
guess
no,
my
not-
point
not
is
that, but a lot of them require.
there are definitely things you can do if you're anticipating a project like mine to protect your historic tree. And I don't know whether it's the Park District or this body, but it would have been helpful to me to have some of those guidelines from somebody without having to go figure it out on my own. That's all my point.
City arborist.
Well,
I mean,
I had
really, right
4
now it's
arborists
called
come
Agostino,
and look
but-
at our tree because it's literally pushing my house.
So can I just say something?
Yeah.
So we have in the past with people who are, taking a tree down or something is too close to, we have talked about, like basically sending them to an arborist if they don't know in terms of how to deal with the foundation. So we do bring that up.
Right.
And I think it's important for all of us to be sensitive to those issues as well in terms of, we don't necessarily really always focus on the landscape as part of a landmark or those, but I think some of those issues sometimes do come up. So I think it's good to continue to be sensitive to that. But we usually send someone, if they haven't been to an arborist, to take a look at the tree. We talk about some of those things
Right.
when we're dealing with projects.
Because I personally feel that it's part of our historic district heritage that we have stewardship of this giant tree. And I would find it appalling if I just decided to take it out for some personal reason. So I just wanted to say.
Gary,
Go ahead.
you're going to come on up. Okay, let's hear from Gary, and then let's move on.
I promise. I'll make this very quick. I've listened to this, and I feel like I should also say the following. I understand Alderman Fisk's reasoning for wanting to do this. I think it would be a disservice to private owners. It would be a disservice to property owners under 2 acres to pursue this. I think the commission, I think Julie's hinted at this, would be overstepping by getting involved in this. Landmarking trees would further debilitate an owner's ability to do anything. I think Alderman Fisk should go back and rethink what this is. And if your recommendation is for, against, or for improvements, I think it needs to be looked at very carefully, because I think it's a very difficult proposal, well-intentioned, but I think it's not in the right direction. It's not in the best interest of this commission to get involved in it. So.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that part of it. I think there's no
feel strongly
dispute whatsoever on that part of it.
When this goes down as there was some for and some against, I think there needs to be some voice saying that in the best interest of property ownership, economic development, and property owners' rights, I think this has to be looked at very carefully. So, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay. Aleka, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm sorry. Okay, come on up. Okay.
Hey, we let them stay in the room. They have
Well, I stayed around because I wanted just to have a couple words with Carlos after the meeting. But in listening to this, I think that the treatment of trees should not be dependent upon what fractional part of Evanston a tree is located. I think that the jurisdiction of this commission ought to relate to the geographic areas where you have, and if there's going to be some approach taken to trees, it should be something that affects the entire city.
That's a great idea. We can include in our report. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, right. So what if the trees don't even fall within a historic district?
I'll put that in our...
And we don't really, just in terms of evaluate, I don't know, because I really don't know where they are.
Okay. Aleka, please introduce yourself. We welcome Aleka to our commission. She got... Actually, this was a lot calmer than the last meeting you missed, so be ready at the July meeting for a harder meeting.
Okay. I'm Aleka Tessera Sullivan, and I'm a new commission member. I don't know what...
I noticed you have, maybe not in your current position, but in the past you have experience with the historic standards with the National Park Service?
Yes, I worked for years for the National Park Service in their Technical Preservation Services Division, which oversees the federal historic tax credit, and seeing people apply on commercial buildings in that case to if renovating or changing structures as it applies to the Secretary of Interior standards. And I have a master's in historic preservation from Boston University, and thank you for letting me serve.
No, I want to express our gratitude for your interest to continue your tenure as a preservationist, even though you had a little bit of a break there, I understand. But thank you for your interest.
Is there any other business that I can't remember?
Oh, okay. Can I just really review quickly? I'm just reporting on guidelines. So Carlos has actually entered in our Elliot, Jack, and I many years ago put together guidelines for the city of Evanston and a way to kind of navigate to try to figure out this preservation commission and what a citizen of Evanston might do to move through the process. And Carlos sort of started this, so he he actually put online. It's not online yet, but it's
not
in
accessible,
the system.
right? So there's
so we're hoping that this will be live sometime soon. Anyway, thank you, Carlos.
Thank you for your patience. It's been a long road
I
for
know.
us. So right now, there's a couple things I need to do. There's some links that I need to make sure that they work, or create new links for documents or information. And also, I need to work with IT to have the same font, the same look of the new page or pages. Right now, it looks different, but I didn't have the expertise to go further. So at some point, I need to work with IT to do that.
I have something else. Okay, so this isn't, this is something that came up, and I don't know if everyone's aware of it, and I think I just want to bring it up because I think we should address it in some way, and it's not going to happen tonight, so I'm just going to say it. Because of the ruling that from the lake or body of water, it's not a public, God, I don't even have the language anymore. Public view,
Public way.
Public way, that that we have no, we can't basically look at those facades, or if there's an addition or whatever, like Gary's, the project that he brought forth, that we have no jurisdiction over that. So it might also happen if there's not an alley and it's the back facade of a landmark, and, we would have no jurisdiction over that either. I don't really think when we were, when I wasn't part of that group that was putting the new, well, it wasn't the proposal, but I wasn't part of that group that actually put that together, all of the new rulings, but it just seems like it's something that I think we should address as a group. I did speak to the lawyer at the city and explained what my personal concerns are for something like that, where that landmark house is more than the front facade, but it's the whole house. So if we have no, imagine if it was a Frank Lloyd Wright or something like that, we have no jurisdiction over the back because it's either facing a lake or facing another property and not visible from a public way, that some not so great things might happen to that particular landmark. So he suggested that we put language together or try to, whatever that looks like. I don't know what the vehicle is because I know this is a public meeting. I don't know how to expedite something like that if, we were concerned. But I really do think this is a different twist on the things that we have always looked at.
Well, why don't we study study how other ordinances work? I don't know if the national standards apply to this, but I think we need to step back and see, what the intent is and how it should work. I'm not sure. I think it's hard to say what should be changed or why, and I don't think we should start drafting changes or something until we have a better understanding of the issue.
Who's going to do this better understanding of the issue? I really feel that it's important enough to address as opposed to just say something and then not address it. So I'm asking for a path forward.
Okay, well, why don't we, my suggestion would be we look at other preservation standards and other ordinances and see if we can see how it's addressed.
It only comes up if you've got a situation where there is a body of water, we'll call it the lake for the moment.
It's anything visible, Elliot.
It's also I know, because your issue is also what happens if there is no alley, therefore. Is it the neighbor across, behind your home? Gary, I think you were around long enough for when the issue of the lake came up, so I want to...
That's been legally decided. It goes back to my tenure on this commission.
But who legal, I mean, now it's in the ordinance, but before that, it came from legal. If I'm not mistaken, they just simply made a decision.
Gary, do you mind just
Yeah, we're,
Yeah, and,
So they can fill
really,
it
if there's any substantive changes need to be made, it's not an agenda item. So
I
it
would
be something
agree.
in the future. We can
I would
bring
agree
up.
with that. It's been discussed at length during my tenure on
Talking
the
about the lake.
commission.
I'm not
What's
talking
that?
about the, it's just a done.
both.
It is. If there is no public right-of-way, and that's even debatable whether the sidewalk or private drive or lake or whatever, if there's not a public way and it's not visible, then it is not the purview of this commission. That's been the way it was written. When the Northwestern parking garage, which was the impetus, I think, for the legal ruling, if you talk to Michelle Mason-Cup or look in the history, the commission denied that garage several times based on its visibility from not only the beach but also the lake. And Northwestern challenged it. I don't know if it went to court, but they challenged it. The city made a firm ruling, and it, since that point, has been the rule. So, like it or not, when I was on the commission, we dealt with this on several projects. But as you say, if there's no alley, it's not visible from a public way. The neighbors can certainly comment and have discussion, but it's not technically the purview
Right.
of this body. So.
Although we have been, historically, we have been looking, because, we have looked at those projects and evaluated them, not on the lake, but, because we came before with a project with an addition on the back and a deck, and we were evaluating it differently. So
That, I think, is, you mentioned earlier that there needs to be some examination of some of the language.
Right.
There are pieces in the revised ordinance that need to be looked at carefully because there are some perhaps language errors or misinterpretations of that. But there are cases like that from my tenure as well that the commission spent a lot of time discussing something that was not the purview of the commission, and I think was overturned in the end. So.
Yeah.
Is that on Mark?
I don't know if on significant house, like on landmark houses or something like that. I know federally, if we can review the entire exterior and the rear facade, if it wasn't visible, we would give more leeway. But we had a little bit of jurisdiction over really egregious changes.
Yeah.
But
I think we should look at all those things and just draw together resources as a starting point.
All right, and the other thing that this is a question for Carlos. So I know that there are easements on some homes in Evanston that we're not really privy to know about. If they have an easement from Landmark, Illinois, where you actually, every facade is protected, and you get these, tax credits, but you actually, it's a very restrictive covenant on every facade. And so my question is, when the commission, if the commission wouldn't know if they were reviewing a project that had easements, and should that be something that, because we could find out. I mean, all you have to do is ask Landmark, Illinois, what are the easements in Evanston? Should that come into play? Because it is, if someone comes before us and we already know that, it's a totally different set of rules.
It should be on their deed, and I don't know whether
It should be,
when
but
they were recorded.
But I don't know if, so that's my question. It seems that we should know about those.
What actually happens the other way around. When there's a project that has an easement, I get calls from Landmarks Illinois to make sure it's on the agenda or not. They call me to let me know.
Is something that is
There's people at Landmarks that are monitoring our agendas to make sure that they're not doing something without their knowledge if they have an easement.
The only question is that it doesn't always have to be, you don't have to deed everything over to them. I mean, somebody can do one of those easements. It doesn't necessarily have to go to LI.
But I think you have to make a distinction between local entity, public entity like the City of Evanston versus a private entity. They have different sets of rules. So I think that if they can review rear elevations is because they have the program that is restricting the applicant that is getting a direct benefit. So there's an agreement between the Landmarks Illinois per se and the owner. So the owner agrees that they will do that.
I understand, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of all of that and that you knew, so that we didn't spend all this time reviewing something that was already protected, that we were saying, oh yeah, we can't see it from a public way, so I'm just giving examples, so whatever, do whatever. So I didn't know that, so thank you for telling me that.
Okay. Anything else? We probably should adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in
Waiting
favor?
for somebody to do that.
All opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.